winter to train her team. Until now. You see, the residents of Alaska stand on the front lines of global climate change. Greenhouse gases from the burning of fossil fuels have led to record high temperatures. That means shorter winters, melting glaciers, and endangered species. So, our dog sledder in Alaska has something in common with this fisherman from the Maldive Islands here in the Indian Ocean. Because of global warming, low-lying island nations have been watching the seas slowly rise for years. Unless things change, this fisherman and many others will become environmental refugees. And what's the effect of climate change on the natural world? Irreplaceable marine jewels like this coral reef in Thailand might die off completely if warming trends continue. Which means our scuba diver may be part of the last generation to behold this living wonder. So remember, it's all connected. So the next time you marvel at a sunrise or pause to watch the clouds pass by, just think about how research for the space station improves the lives of rural villagers. How choices we make at the gas pump shape the kind of future we will inhabit. And how our continued reliance on fossil fuels could threaten people and wildlife around the planet. We're all in this together.
We have an opportunity to do a power shift from enormous inflows of fossil fuels to a cleaner energy system based on very energy efficient technology and renewable energy. If we make that shift, the future is going to be really bright.
The youth of today are responsible for the future. It is possible.
There are alternatives.
I think it's really important to understand our relationship to energy simply because we are the youth of the nation, that we have to be prepared for what's going to come.
I'm really interested in solar power and how it works and how we can use it, and I was just wondering, why don't we use more of that?
Actually, I don't know where renewable energy comes from.
It's really important that we try and wean ourselves off of fossil fuels.
I think of fuels that have taken millions of years to produce and that we're taking just a few generations to use up.
Filling up our tank and putting our credit card in, not really thinking about where it's coming from.
It really makes me wonder how dependent we are nowadays on one single source of energy.
How sophisticated are human designers? Think about a tree. How many human designers can go out and put something in the ground that they've designed that starts making oxygen, distills water, provides habitat for hundreds of species, builds soil, uses solar energy as fuel, and self-replicates? I mean, how many buildings you know made oxygen lately? What we're talking about, this idea of a building like a tree, could actually happen. As an architect, I have to follow the law of gravity. It's not just a good idea, it's the law. So we're looking out at the natural world and saying, what other laws might there be that we should obey as well? It's interesting, when we don't follow nature's laws, we all get worried about growth. But if we follow nature's laws, growth is good. So the idea that a building could be like a tree would mean you'd say, oh, there's another building coming. Oh, it makes energy and it makes oxygen and it purifies water. Oh, good. I wish we had more of them. So we're looking at how to design buildings in the future that are like living things. At the Ford Rouge Center, Ford Motor Company's new assembly building, there's a 12-acre habitat on top of an assembly plant. I mean, that building is making oxygen. The roof is a sedum. It's a species from the Mediterranean that can survive the kind of dry atmosphere that happens on a roof in the summer. We're using this plant to absorb water, provide habitat, and so on. We're using nature as a tool. Now, the Ford Rouge Center as a historical place is really ground zero of the first industrial revolution. This is a place where coal and iron ore would come in and be transformed into automobiles all at one place. So you can imagine raw materials at one end and finished products at the other. Astonishing vision of linear mass production. But it's really based on a cradle-to-grave concept where we went out and took the metal out of the ground, made it into a car, and then put it in a landfill or trashed it somehow. And I think at this point in history, we look back at that and realize that this idea of the linear system can now be reconceived as part of a cyclical system. What we're trying to do is follow nature's laws. And what we see in the natural world is that waste equals food. One thing's waste is another thing's food, so there's no such thing as waste. So we're not saying minimize waste, reduce, reuse, recycle. We're not saying that. We're saying eliminate the entire concept of waste. Shift over to a cradle-to-cradle industrial system that reuses plastics and metals and so on over and over and over again. Then the question becomes energy. Nature operates from the sun. It works right from current solar income. The sun can provide about 5,000 times more energy than humans will ever need to function. And if you imagine going home tonight and the bank called and said, we've got 5,000 times more income than you need to live on, I think you'd figure out your home economics. So I think as a culture, we'll figure out how to work with solar energy. Human beings at this point in history have to stop and take stock of our designs and start to imagine what truly sophisticated design would look like. And we're rather crude, really, when you stop and think about it. We have the idea that a house is a machine for living in. And we end up with these machines that we just add energy to. If they're too cold, you just add energy. And if they're too hot, you just add energy. And so now, we realize that this idea of living in the machine is not necessarily meant for humans. If you could imagine a building like a tree, imagine a house that had solar electric panels on the roof. Imagine that they had very effective ground source heat pumps, so the building has roots into the ground where it's 55 degrees. So you always start your cooling at 55 degrees and then cool from there. And in the winter, the other way around, instead of going out and getting 32-degree air, you can start with 55 because you're connected like a tree into the ground. So if our buildings were connected into the earth and out to the sun, it's quite conceivable that a house and a family could be a net energy exporter and actually in the course of a year produce more energy than they need. When you design something, if you think just about economy, then you make decisions based on price. And you may not ask the price to society or the price to the environment. We like to ask all three simultaneously. What can we do for the environment? What can we do for society? And what can we do for our current economics? And clearly we have to be profitable. Otherwise, a company ceases to exist. The idea is to balance all three while we're designing. A power shift to me means a shifting of the thing that powers our culture. And right now, fossil fuels are powering this culture. We can recognize that our dependency on these things is causing all sorts of stresses. I mean, the whole issue of terrorism, the whole issue of the Middle East and all that is all directly connected to the fossil fuel world. So not only is our environment going to transform as we shift over into clean, renewable energy systems, but our whole social relationship around the planet is going to change, which means that we have to redesign everything. So there's a whole new world out there, and we have to make it, and the young people are in charge. Isn't that exciting?
When I hear words like wind power and solar power, it makes me think of simplicity.
My house is not very energy efficient.
I think we have a pretty energy efficient house.
Well, in my home we have compact fluorescent light bulbs, which last longer than regular light bulbs and are more energy efficient.
I've seen Energy Star on my VCR and on compact fluorescent light bulbs, but I'm not sure what that exactly means.
If we knew the source of the energy that we're using, we would be able to make a much more informed choice.
I turn on my light and where did my energy come from right that second?
Every time I go into my living room and I turn on the TV, it's going to turn on.
Out at some huge power grid or something, some energy starts buzzing and it starts coming towards me, all so that I can do my homework at night. I don't know. I think of it as this huge journey that this light takes to get to me.
It's a simple action. You switch on the light, turn on the TV, or power up your computer. But do you ever stop to think, where does electricity come from?
If I turn a light on in a room, the second that I turn that on, somewhere in the world, a generator has to make that electricity. And if I turn it off, somewhere in the world, a generator has to reduce its power a little bit.
We can go through our life never thinking twice about electricity because the energy industries are wonderful overachievers. Most people don't really understand how hard it is to meet our energy needs.
Today, most of our electricity comes from burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. The trouble is, they pollute our environment and endanger our health. The big question, do we have a choice?
The sun is the source of all the fossil fuels on the planet. It's also the source, the driving force behind all the renewable energy. When you go outside on a sunny day, the sunlight hitting your face left the sun 8 minutes ago. In 8 minutes, it traveled 93 million miles. It's hauling ass. It's a gift from God.
Fortunately, Earth is endowed with an abundant supply of clean, renewable energy. The best known examples are solar, wind, geothermal, and hydropower. These renewables account for a small fraction of the electricity we produce. But that's changing. Around the globe, wind power is the fastest growing source of electricity. It's very possible that the electricity for our light bulb came from a wind farm like this one near Palm Springs, California. Designed like airplane wings, modern wind turbines use lift to capture the wind's energy.
The reason this is such a unique area for wind energy development is because of the cool air that comes in from the ocean and gets funneled through these two mountain passes, and it meets the hot air of the desert, and that creates a wind tunnel. The amazing thing is that one of these turbines will provide enough electrical energy to power 400 homes.
The United States has enough wind potential to produce 3 times more electricity than it currently uses, just from wind farms like this one.
For me personally, the most exciting aspect of this industry is the environmental benefits and the responsible stewardship of our world's natural resources. That is very rewarding.
The network for distributing renewable energy is already built. Think of it as an electron superhighway. The power grid doesn't care if the electricity it's carrying comes from a coal plant, a wind farm, or any other energy source. An electron is just an electron. So how would we power our light bulb with renewable wind energy? It all starts with the sun, which heats up Earth. Hot air rises and cool air rushes in, creating wind. Spinning turbines convert wind energy into electricity, which is distributed through the electrical grid, over miles and miles of power lines, to a local substation, and finally, to you. Mission accomplished, right? Think again.
Most of our homes now are on life support. They're in intensive care. We've got them hooked up to a power line, a natural gas line. You go home, everything there is hooked up to some distant energy infrastructure 100 or 1,000 miles away.
Right now, we depend on energy companies to power our lives. But does it have to be like this?
The average American house gets enough sunlight hitting the roof to provide almost all its hot water and all its electricity. So you could have a solar hot water system and a solar photovoltaic system on your roof that supplied the energy needs for the house underneath it. I have these systems on my home. They work beautifully.
This family in Santa Rosa, California, installed solar panels on their house. They often generate more energy than they use, so their electric meter actually spins backwards. What they don't use, they sell back to the utility. As people become smarter about the design of homes and buildings, they stop being just energy consumers and start becoming energy producers. Imagine if our houses could produce their own power, and we're all connected to a worldwide web of electricity. This can happen. Until then, make sure you know where your electricity is coming from and do your best to conserve it. The first step is energy efficiency. Whenever you buy an electrical appliance, look for the Energy Star label. If every home in the US bought an Energy Star refrigerator, we could close 10 aging power plants. Fossil fuels won't last forever. Even if they did, they still harm the environment. Choosing green power, energy from clean renewable sources, makes a world of difference.
The best way to grow green power is for consumers to demand it. It's supply and demand.
Today, you and your family have got a whole lot of choices that we didn't used to have. If you want to have your electricity come from a renewable resource, call your electric utility.
So the next time you switch on a light or boot up your computer, remember this. The power begins with you.
Knowing that those wind farms and windmills actually deliver energy directly into my own household, it's surprising.
Solar power gives people so much more freedom.
We have a resource that is natural, harmless, and in a great abundance.
I think it's really exciting to think that there's a house somewhere that can also be giving back as well as consuming.
I need to make my voice heard. I need to say that, look, I don't want a polluted world, I want a clean world.
I think we're at a crossroads in history.
We have to take it upon ourselves and into our own hands.
The grown-ups of today have done their best, but it's our responsibility to change.
If we go to clean energy, not only will we be serving ourselves, we'll be serving future generations, we'll be serving the planet.
It takes a drop to start a waterfall. Each of our individual actions add up to something big. Today, we stand between two eras. One is falling away, one is being born. Imagine the future. Make a choice. What if 100% of the world's population had access to electricity? What if we designed buildings like trees? What if all power was green power? What can we do? What can you do? Well, spend your money wisely. Always buy Energy Star products, a guarantee of energy efficiency. Change the lights in your home to compact fluorescents. They use 75% less energy. Lead the transition to a new era of automobiles. When you or your family buy a new car, make it a fuel-efficient hybrid. You'll save thousands of dollars in fuel costs and help reduce our dependence on imported oil. Make green power commonplace. Call your local utility and ask about buying green power. The more people that request green electricity, the faster it will grow. Find out if your school or home qualifies for rebates on the purchase and installation of solar power. Keep educating yourself and those around you. Learn more about what your national, state, and community leaders are doing to create a sustainable energy future. Energy policy starts with us, the citizens. Be the difference that makes a difference. Change the world. It's time for a power shift.
We're on the verge, we're right at that point where we need to make a decision as a country and as a world as to which direction we're going to take this planet.
Every individual has to make a lot of smart choices.
It does add up to a whole.
If enough people do a little bit, a huge impact can be made.
We're the ones that have to make the decisions for our future. We're the ones that are going to have to make the change.
I want to live in a world where I can breathe and not choke on like the fumes and the exhaust and everything. And I also want to just live in a place that celebrates the earth and not just takes from it, but also kind of gives back. And I think that if people make conscious energy decisions, then we can have that world.
Major funding was provided by the California State and Consumer Services Agency and by the Philadelphia Foundation. To order the PowerShift DVD, call 1-800-937-5387.
We look at the food we eat from the dinner plate to the farm, field, and ocean, and how our demand for cheap food and more food has altered the food chain. A food chain that is motivated by making the greatest amount of food for the cheapest cost. In other words, efficiency.
Coming up next.
On the next History Detectives, what does this scorecard reveal about the desegregation of our national pastime? And what tales does this basket weave of the heroism of a Native American woman? No secret is safe. Next time on History Detectives.
Tuesday at 8.
As a kid, I knew that men from Kahnawake were renowned for their ironworking skills. But what I didn't know until years later was that several small blocks in downtown Brooklyn was a temporary home away from home for hundreds of Mohawks from my reserve of Kahnawake. The more I learned about the community, how it was even referred to as Little Kahnawake, the more fascinated I became. I wanted to hear from the women and children who once called Brooklyn home, and about my own family's connection to New York.
Tuesday at 9. Tuesday at 10.
Be ready for some big surprises.
Globe Trekker. Live the adventure.
Wednesday at 8.
It's been called illuminating, incredibly moving, and brilliantly done. The Forgetting put a human face on the tragedy of Alzheimer's disease. Join me for an encore broadcast of this Emmy Award-winning documentary, programming no one should miss.
Wednesday at 9.